Hey there, thanks so much for tuning in to today's episode of The Deliberate Zoomer, hosted by myself, Silas Maynor, and my good friend, Michael Simonton. We hope you enjoyed today's episode.
Who?
Well, welcome back to the show, everybody. With Michael Simonton again, my fellow Praxian. And today we're going to be talking about how to decide what you want and the importance of deciding something, right? So everybody has, as we talked about previously, the opportunity to accept the facts of their life, right? So that they're in charge. And if you are in charge of your life, obviously that means you are going to start working towards something, right? You have some type of goal that you'll need to set in mind. And we're going to discuss kind of the different nuances and things that we've learned and that we've read and experienced in regards to decision making. So I guess, Michael, what are your kind of initial thoughts here on people, especially remember the audience for people who are still trying to figure out what they want. A lot of these people are like yourself and me that have a lot of ambition, and they've obviously accepted responsibility for their life, and they don't know specifically what they want, and there's a lot of pressure for them to figure it out. So what are your kind of initial thoughts?
Absolutely. Great question, Silas. It's great to be here with you today again. So my initial thoughts are, if you don't know exactly what you want out of life and you're still figuring that out, then recognize that you don't need to have a clear set goal. Recognizing that that's okay. And so you can have an idea of where you want to go, and you can make decisions based off of that. One of the best ways that I've seen, and that I think people should take, is to create a hierarchical approach to their values and what they want out of life. So if you think God is important, bam, there you go. So that means you're going to set up habits. Let's back that up again. Sorry. If you think God is important, then awesome. That's one. You think family is important. You got two there. Career, 3, fitness and health, 4, and that list can go on for forever. But I would take those things and then I would build habits, those important factors, because those are goals. Those are loosely defined end goals in your mind of who you want to be and what you want to become. So God, go to church on Sundays, maybe once or twice during the week, say your prayers, read your Bible, all that above. Family, make sure you're staying in touch with your family. So maybe call your mom once a week, call a brother or sister, something like a couple days a week, stuff like that. So you can build these little habits, these little routines into your day-to-day that will lead you ultimately to your goals of being this well-rounded person, of having those characteristics and those traits. The person you want to be, you just don't know what specific, where specifically that will take place. So you can still build for that and prioritize for that without having a clearly defined goal, because having the clearly defined goals can be difficult, and it takes some time. So I think that's a great place to start for getting there. I'd love to hear your 2 cents on that, Silas, though.
I think it's very important, because for me specifically, and this is something I feel pretty passionate about, is for the first, I didn't go to college, and I had never really had much intention of going to college as I was finishing high school. And I had a rough idea of what I wanted, but that really started to change as soon as I became an adult and started working, right? So I started to realize, I like this, I don't like that. My initial ideas of wanting to go into to building houses and having a construction company was quickly realized I do not want that. I want to be a business owner. I don't want to have to do the physical work. So these things were all of these thoughts just going through my mind all the time. I was doing a lot of manual labor at the time, so I had a lot of time to just think about these things. And it hasn't been until 3 years later now that I've gotten a pretty good sense of what I specifically want, clear goals, which I also have an asterisk by. That's those can change. So going back, if I think back, the best thing I could have done early on was to clearly define, instead of just having it all in my head, getting it on paper or talking to somebody about it, is clearly define what areas of my life are important to me, right? What areas of my life are important to me. And then I will create and create a schedule that adds time in each of those areas to make sure that I'm growing in every area. So if you know, in terms of working out, right? I personally like, I'm a terrible example of this, but um, if you want to be really healthy and fit, you got to work out every muscle in your body, right? You can't just do only upper body day. You can't just do biceps, right? For me, like I'm the kind of guy who says no day is leg day, just to be clear. But but you need to have a well balanced routine, right? You need to have areas in everything. So if you focus on one thing too much, I don't care who you are, you're gonna have some type of like burnout, or you're gonna eventually hate what you do. So you need to have those multiple areas. So I think that if you are not certain what you want, decide the areas of your life that are important to you, whether that's career, family, religion, fitness, whatever. Those things, define them in your mind. Like write them down on a piece of paper. Whether you never look at that piece of paper again doesn't matter. You still have written that down and have formalized that thought. So I think that's a good place to start. I think the other factor too is to remember that this is not a one-time shot. Like you don't have one shot at setting your goals. I know it's very difficult, and I think we'll talk about this more in a later episode with college and deciding whether or not to go. But I think it becomes very difficult for people because they're thinking, I'm 18, I'm 19 years old, I'm 20. I have to decide what I want to be with my life. I literally have only had, really basic jobs. Most 18-year-olds have had really like working at McDonald's or stuff like that, right? Pretty simple jobs that really haven't allowed them to explore their curiosity. So I think that it's important to remember that you don't have to decide exactly what you want to be right now. This is really what set me out on this journey, and feeling comfortable about who I wanted to become was when I was working, I was doing landscaping, and one of Gary Vee's podcasts came up, and he said in there, why are 50-year-olds telling 19-year-olds to have everything figured out or to have their shit figured out when 50-year-olds don't have their shit figured out? And I was like, dang, that is so true. So that's kind of what set me on this trajectory. And I think that, I guess I'll pass it over to you on, what do you think that the next steps are, and any thoughts on what I've just mentioned there?
Exactly. No, great points. And I think what we both said there really ties in together, because we're really touching on the same thing, which is, you don't have to have that clear defined goal because you haven't had a lot of experiences or opportunities yet. But you can still set yourself up for that by creating those habits and stuff like you were talking about. Another thing I think is very, very important to point out is that knowing what you don't want is almost just as important as knowing what you do want. So you might not know exactly what your goal is and who you want to be and like what you want to be doing, but you can know that you don't want to be working in construction all day. You can know that you don't want to be slaving away doing manual labor, that you don't want to be stuck behind a desk either and just pushing paper. You can know these things, and through the process of elimination, you can get yourself closer to knowing your ultimate goal and what you want to become. And so they are just as important as that. Also, another thing to mention there is, while running towards a goal is fantastic, like it's great to chase that carrot, another great thing is running away from something. So if, you want to put this in a great, easy picture, when do you think you're going to run faster? When you see, I don't know, something down the street that you want and you're sprinting after it? Or when you look behind you and you realize that there's a furious pit bull and he's trying to tear you to pieces? You're going to run faster away from the pit bull because that's how we're set up. So knowing that, what you don't want really just adds fuel to that fire. It's like, you're optimizing both ends of the equation. So I think it's very important to also identify those things that you don't want to be and that you don't care for, because that's also, and this looks like a couple different ways for people. For me, it was like, okay, well, I worked at 18, 19, I'd worked in coffee shops. I loved it. But I looked at the people older than me and I realized that's not the life that I want. And that's not the type of person I want to be. So I was like, if I stay in this trajectory, if I keep doing what I'm doing today, then that's probably where I'm going to end up. And so I started realizing that I needed to surround myself with different people. I needed to focus in on my goals more. And it lit that fire underneath me and really started me down this journey of praxis, of self-improvement, self-betterment, and getting my shit figured out, to put it in the easiest, concise sense of the term. But yeah, no, I just wanted to throw that out there real quick. Do you have any thoughts on that, Silas?
I think that is actually interesting. So it ties a little bit back into our previous conversation from the last episode with trying to accept responsibility. So the idea of running away from what you don't want is important. So how do you do that, right? How do you actually start doing that? Because I know, like, I've seen so many people who I know, not super. I know people really well, and then I know there's some people I don't know super well who do this, where they have a certain issue or a certain thing, like they always go back to it. And if they could just write that down on a piece of paper, being like, wow, my life sucks when I'm doing this, or when I'm hanging out with these people, or when I'm whatever. Figure out what that is and just say it like it is. Like, not going to sleep or staying up late and partying is screwing up my life. I'm going to avoid that. Even though it's very alluring, I'm going to avoid that. So write it down and then steer clear of that. Because once you can start creating these parameters, then you can start to have a little bit of direction in life. This is something that, the inspiration for all this discussion, essentially, it comes from obviously life experiences, but also from Meg Jay's book, The Defining Decade. And she talks about how one of her clients, when she's a psychologist, and in one of her therapy sessions with one of her clients, he was saying he feels like he's in an ocean with literally nothing in sight. He had no idea where to go and where to start. So it felt pointless to start paddling in any direction. And I think that figuring out and identifying what you don't want is like starting to kind of narrow down the options. Because if you have no idea, you need to at least narrow down the options to a few things, and then you can start going in some direction. And I think that as you go through life, having those "I don't want this" helps you to decide that. So that's one thing that I've done is, I guess, not necessarily as actively or deliberately as I should have, but I noticed about myself that if I ever get to a mindset where I'm like, I wonder if I should go to college or become a lawyer, like I start thinking about these things. Typically that's an indicator for me that I'm in a bad place. I'm pretty depressed and I don't have a lot of mission in my life. So when that happens, I've just associated that with stepping back and figuring out, all right, I got to reassess what's going on here. So, I think that's good. I think that once you can identify those areas, we'll talk about this later, but developing habits to coincide with those areas of your life, that's definitely what you need to do next, is make sure you put effort into those areas of importance to you. But then once you've identified those areas, then you're going to be able to start getting a clearer idea of who you want to be, because you're essentially cutting the extras out. You're cutting out the noise, and then you're going to be able to focus on, what do I actually want, right? What do I want to accomplish? Do you, what kind of experiences do you have with that? Before we move on to kind of the planning out your goals for a little bit longer future, what experiences do you have with recognizing that and then implementing those important areas into your life?
Absolutely. Yeah, no. So experiences with that would be, I just want to finish this little image real quick that we had of the man in the ocean, So first you figure out what's important to you. And so you know that you're not going to go south. So you slowly cut out a little bit more. Then you figure out what you don't want. And you're just slowly narrowing your focus in on one thing. And so and then what happens for me, when you realize, what you kind of, what your interests are and what you want to go for, I'd say that's what it would be next. That's your next step, would be to focus in on what you're interested in, and start pursuing those things. I'm sorry, I really did just kind of blank on that question, Silas, and I really apologize about that. But
I think that it's actually good. So you're saying once you've started to narrow it down, you have a general direction. It's like, all right, I know I'm not going to go south. I don't really want to go west. So I'll focus on, this northeast area. I'm going to go towards
Yeah.
that. And once you do that, I think just naturally, because you've eliminated things, your brain starts to come up with more hard ideas of what you want, right? So at first it's just like, I want to be fit. I want to be financially sound. I want to have a good relationship with God, and I want to have a good relationship with my family. That's very intangible, which is fine. It's very good to start with that. And then the next step will be, what do I do to make those habits, make those things habits, which again, we'll talk about later. But as far as defining what you want, so the thing that it's obviously very muddy waters for everybody, right? Everybody's going to go through their own kind of awakening, or I guess figuring this out. It's not easy. But what worked for me was just constantly asking myself, what do I actually want? And the more I wrote, with praxis, obviously, the more I started doing podcasts and writing blog posts, the more these thoughts started to come out. And the more I had these discussions, the more I started to formalize, oh, this is actually what I want. And I started to just pay attention to the things that interested me. And I think this is the next point. As far as, we'll talk about picking your career, your first job later. But I think as far as the sector that you're going to work on, this is part of this. Is once you define the main areas of importance, you'll have more bandwidth in your brain to start focusing on and realizing, I should say, what interests you. So for me, it was realizing I'm extremely interested in startups in general, like the idea, the business behind it. How many of these startups have succeeded but are also not succeeding, like WeWork and all those things. And I started to realize I could read about this stuff all day, and I love talking about it. So that gave me an idea, and then I was able to further narrow it down when I ended up getting into this job, which was the renewable energy and clean tech. So it didn't come all together at once. And even though I've set out a pretty decent kind of outline and plan for the next 10 years, I have the complete understanding that if that doesn't happen that way, I'm not going to be upset at myself. In fact, it's likely going to change, right? And that's okay. But it's important because then you feel like you're working towards something, right? And I think that for a lot of us, a lot of people listening, I mean, just people in general, there's so many problems in the world. There's just so many things that contribute to poor mental health and depression of all sorts, that it's important to have a mission. And even if you have a mission that can change, but you have a rough trajectory, that's going to help you to be happier in general. What would you add to that?
Oh, absolutely. I'm also, I'd say, very mission driven. But to go back to those interests, that's exactly where you want to go next. You want to focus in on those interests. You want to realize that, for you, it was startups. For me, I realized that I love talking to people. I love talking about pretty much anything, hearing stories. And what I really love doing is figuring out ways to influence or to help guide people. Was the obvious route for me. When it comes to a career, like I didn't know that's what I wanted to do. Had no intention of getting into any sort of sales. But once I realized that you can spend your day helping people, influencing them for the better, I was like, everything that we do as humans is selling. We sell in so many ways because we're trying to influence people's decisions, whether that's good or bad. That's irrelevant. We literally, so much of us spend how much of our day just trying to influence someone's decision, getting someone to like us, getting someone to give us some of their time, getting someone to help us out here or there. But that technically, those are non-selling sales. There's a non-sales selling. So you're still influencing someone. And I realized that. And so focusing in on those interests, focusing in on what I knew I liked doing and what got me excited really helped me define where I wanted to go, helped me figure out a broader goal. And then, you jump into a role, you jump into a job, you start focusing in on those interests, and you realize that, okay, out of all this talk, this sales stuff, these things really interest me. I mean, I love teaching. So I want to figure out a way where I can start teaching what I've learned. I love, participating in a community and guiding people, basically teaching again. So those are those things those are the things that I started focusing in on and realizing just by slowly narrowing my focus. And that's helped me realize my trajectory and my goals in life. So to your point, it's all a process of slowly just weeding out what you do and like what you don't know, what you don't want, what you know, slowly, as you just, those oceans narrow down, and suddenly you'll just have a clear defined goal. And then that's how you should go about it if you don't have one off the bat. Now, there are those people out there who just come out of the womb knowing that they're going to be the best neurosurgeon in the world, or they hit 7 years old and they read a book and they're like, oh my gosh, this character's awesome. I want to be an architect. I thought that was me. And they set their whole like career out after that. And they realized later on that maybe that wasn't for them and maybe it was. But those people, good for them. Honestly, God bless you if you came out of the womb knowing what you wanted. I envy you. Like, that's pretty cool. Yeah. But it also, I think, is a lot less exciting. Like, you have your clearly defined goal, but the experiences that individuals like ourselves who didn't have that will have to go to narrow down and figure out what we're going for are going to be so much more valuable, because we will have a plethora of like different experiences, and we'll be a much more well-rounded person for having tried different things to get to where we are today. And I think that's a benefit that a lot of people don't talk about, especially because, okay, so looking at, where I am today as opposed to some of my fellow classmates from high school, like, you'd be like, oh no, they're clearly more successful. I'm like, yeah, sure. Tommy's making great money right now, working in some IT department, probably for Microsoft. Great for him. But what we don't realize is that's all he's ever done. He's only ever done IT stuff. He's never been like out working manually in the labor field. He's never been like selling to people out like over the phone. He's never been working in coffee shops. He hasn't like had all these other experiences, which are so valuable to becoming a good, well-rounded, wholesome person. And I think that is a benefit that a lot of people don't talk about when it comes to not knowing what your goals are, is the process to getting there, and how much more relatable you can be. Like, so if I didn't go through so much of the stuff that I've been through, some of them were based off bad decisions. I get it, but what I can do now is I can speak to people who are going through the same struggles. I can help so much more because of that. And I think that's important. So I just want to say that, but we're slightly off topic, so we can jump back into setting goals.
It's definitely, I think that the deciding what you want and kind of experimenting a little bit with what you're interested in. There's a couple things that I thought of here, is that with your example of Timmy working for Microsoft, right? He had a clear goal. He stuck to it, whether he hated it in college or not. He's now there, and he's making good money. But something that I believe it's Jordan Peterson says, is that happiness is not an achievement. Or maybe it wasn't Jordan Peterson. I think it was a different book I was like reading to or listening to. But it's not an achievement, right? Like, it's not like, oh, I beat my running time. I beat my best mile time. Like, I hit an achievement. That's an achievement. But happiness and success are not something that's like a box you check. And it's not even something that's like a box you can check every day. Like, it's a mindset, and it's in general. Like, it's the sum, it's the average of things, right? Everybody's going to have bad days, but just because you have a bad day, does that mean you're not happy? Does that mean you're not successful? So I think that realizing that, it's not just one thing to work towards. Like, we have slotted for an entire episode to discuss that. But the idea is still important to realize when you're setting your goals and what's important to you is what is important to you. Don't think that this is a one-time shot, and don't see things as just a simple achievement to make towards, right? There's other things. And the other point that while you were mentioning that came up to me is kind of the praxis mindset of having these different experiences lead to you, obviously being a little bit more interesting because you have a diverse background, but also to help you to figure out what's interesting. So, going through praxis, I think it's important for everybody, who doesn't know, is Praxis has essentially 4 outcomes that they try to steer you roughly towards. You help steer yourself towards, which is sales, customer success, roles, marketing, and
Operations.
operations. um, so you go into the program, you set sort of an idea, but they help you to figure it out as you go. And I think that for all of the people listening, if you don't know exactly what you want, you can make a list of your interests. Spend time watching those things, like watching videos about those on YouTube, talking to people in the space. You know, if it's really important to you, you'll find a mentor, right? This is something that was really beneficial for me, and I think we should talk about here is in all of those 4 to 5 core areas of your life, you should have a mentor. You should have somebody that you can go to on a monthly or a couple, you know, every month or 2 basis to just say, hey, this is where I'm at. This is how I'm doing. In this specific area, what would you do and what do you recommend to me to focus on? Because for me, something that I'm always trying to do is to hedge against my youth is the term I use. Like, I'm obviously going to overlook things because I'm 21 years old. I'm going to overlook things. So I need to talk to people who've already been past this mark. Like, they've seen this stretch of the road before and they can tell me what's going on. Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on kind of those 2 things, like figuring it out and the mentors?
Yeah. So many thoughts on those 2 things. So I'll start with the what you said there about happiness isn't a stationary point in time. Happiness, a lot of that's going to come from progress, and you can find that in everything. So by having, it's loving the journey and the process, and not having your everything dependent on this little goal that you check. It's not a checkbox. Life, fortunately, isn't like that. So like, happiness equals progress. So growth, so opportunity, you know, by bringing it back into deciding what you want, you know, slowly working your way there, you're going to feel like you should experience happiness figuring that stuff out, because it's progress and it's growth. But then into the mentors. Yes, absolutely. I think everyone needs a mentor, especially, you know, someone that you can bounce ideas. We all should have 3 groups of people in our lives at any given time. We have our mentors, our peers, and the people beneath us, or people that we're teaching to. So you want to have your mentors where you can learn and grow from, people that have been through there, they have the experiences, they know what's happening, they can give you guidance. Then you want to have your peer group, those individuals who are similar to you, going through similar situations, so you can relate to, you can learn from, you can bounce ideas off with, you can have a good time with. And it's a different relationship than with your mentor. You're still learning and growing with and from them, but it's a different group and a different relationship there. And then you have your people beneath you, the people you are teaching to, those who are less experienced and whatnot. And those are going to really help you solidify everything that you're gaining from the other 2 groups. They're going to help you pass on that knowledge, but they're also going to complete that circle there, that happiness loop, if you want to call it, the positive feedback, because you're going to be giving back. And it's human to want to, you know, help, to give, and that's just going to help you feel that happiness and help you be a more well-defined, living deliberately a lifestyle like that. So a more deliberate life. Yeah.
Yeah, I think then just to kind of, and I'll close up, I know we discussed that we want to talk about the importance of these decisions, right? So we've obviously gone through, and it seems like a pretty heavy topic, right? You need to choose these areas of importance to you. And the reason that you know, if again, this is base level, I don't know what I want, but I know that these certain areas are important to me. So I'm going to add, you know, I'm going to add time in my day or week, you know, I'm going to schedule time in to spend time towards those goals that helps me to develop them. And then I'm going to get mentors for those, as well as have peers that are in those same, you know, have similar goals and alignments. We need to be aligned there. But the big thing is that this is very important to help you to set out, because again, as we mentioned, in your 20s, you have very good opportunity to decide who you want to be and to create this type of life that you're going to have for the rest of your life. And it's not going to be easy to figure it out right away. It's going to take a bit of feedback, talking to people, trying things, and then you'll start to develop kind of an idea that's interesting to you. And before you know it, you'll have a vision, right? And then once you have that vision, then you can go and lay out an outline and get some hard ideas set in stone. But the importance of setting out these areas of importance to you is essentially like the guiding principles, if you will, of your life. If you don't have those guiding principles, you're just going to constantly be, spinning in circles trying to figure out, oh, what about that? What about that? Like, I'm so interested in that. It's like, it's okay to be having those, pinball tendencies. I had a nickname when I was younger that given to me by one of my friends called Pinball, because like I was like a pinball machine. I was just like there and there. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's interesting. I could never focus on one thing. And that's largely been kind of mitigated. It's still there, exactly, but to some extent, but it's been mitigated by the idea that I have this goal in mind and I think about it and I work towards it every week. So it's hard to forget, So what, just to kind of close up, what are your main points as to why it's important to decide on at least some direction of what you want?
I mean, that's super, super easy. It's a great question, but it's like, it's so clear to me that the only way to get anywhere, like to get any direction, is to decide on that's the direction you want to go. So like, the importance of it is, if you want to achieve anything out of life, you have to pick something. You have to go some direction. And to your point earlier, it doesn't have to be the right one. You can change, you can alter your course, but you need a goal. You need a direction to go after. Otherwise, you're just going to be floating back and forth aimlessly. Sure, it'll be fun. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of people, working in the service industry right now in their mid to late 20s, 30s, having a great time. But that doesn't mean they're living a fulfilled life. And the way to do that is to pick goals and to go after it and to make that progress in a direction. And that's what this is all about. So to summarize like everything into like a couple short points, prioritize, figure out what you're looking for out of life, what are important to you. Then B, figure out what you don't want. Figure out what you absolutely know you hate, you don't want. Those are the things that are going to fuel your fire to push you forward. Then figure out what you're interested in. So, once you've got some ideas of what you're interested in, best first step, talk to the people doing it. Like you're interested in sales, you're interested in running a gym, you're interested in health and fitness. Talk to the people who do that. Shadow them. Take a day in their life. See if that interests you. And then, best thing you can do at any given situation is just take action. Aristotle said, action will delineate and define you. So by doing, the mere act of doing, you're going to get so much closer to defining your goals, to figuring out exactly who you want to be, to living deliberately. And so I think that's exactly what you should do. And after all that stuff, throughout that whole process, you will be developing that vision that you were talking about of your goal, of your future, of your life. And you will just be help become a much more fulfilled and productive, happy, healthy, loving human being.
I think that's a great place to end it on. Yes, absolutely. I think it's very, very good. Again, if anybody has questions about these things, feel free to hit us up in the comments and to reach out to us for specific questions. But I think that it's a good place to end. And I guess thank you for joining us today, everybody. And we'll look forward to seeing you in our next episode where we talk about deciding whether or not you should go to college, right? The benefits, the pros and the cons. And we will have a great discussion about that. So thank you, everybody, for joining, and we'll see you next time.